Hello everyone, and here is the top things you probably missed in Loki Episode 2 on Disney+. So in this video, we're going to be going over all the Easter eggs, theories, and basically all the connections we can make to really solve any questions we have in Loki Episode 2. So the beginning of the episode automatically opens up with us in Oshkosh, Wisconsin in the year 1985 at a Renaissance fair, alright? See, most of the stuff right here is pretty unneeded information, but we can take the year 1985 and relate to one thing and one thing only. See, 1985 was the same year that one of the biggest blockbuster films, Back to the Future, came out in the 1985, and we actually learned in the movie Infinity War that Back to the Future actually exists in the Marvel Universe. So by this time in the MCU, this is actually the most we know about time travel, that there's a couple of different ways to time travel. All we know is that the time stone is used to time travel, and then quantum physics. So you might be wondering, how does the TVA time travel all the time? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Plutonium, which was actually mentioned in one of the main sources in the movie Back to the Future. So we learned that Infinity Stones are practically worthless, and there's absolutely dozens of them, enough that some of the guys use as simply as paperweights, that you can definitely assume that a priceless artifact that we have and treasure today, plutonium, is probably in abundance in the world of the TVA, because they pretty much have infinite of all of it. And with their technology, they can easily use it to time travel just like they did in Back to the Future. Right after the cutscene of basically everyone's seen the Renaissance Fair, the Minutemen arrive, probably for one of my favorite scenes in the entire Loki series. We have this amazing fight scene with the song Holding Out for a Hero.
And instead, like usual, everybody just going into deep detail into every single clue.
There's one thing that the MCU is trying to make you notice, and it's the music. It's the music, because of course this is not just a song that you can just kind of slide into a movie that anyone noticing. Everyone's going to notice this song, and that's what they want you to know. So if you simply just look up Holding for a Hero, you find the famous song popped up, which came out in the film of Footloose, but also came out in a number of other films. Like one of the big films that it came out with was actually Angry Birds 2. While the song is playing, there's a scene where they create a giant tsunami with Terrence jumping into the water. Now, if we just look at a tsunami, what movie are you going to think of? Of course, the movie 2012, about the world's biggest natural disaster almost leading to the absolute end of the world, which is exactly what they're talking about in this episode. If you go to the 2012 casting list, an actor by the name of Woody Harrelson actually played in the movie. And Woody Harrelson has built up quite a name for himself, and he's in a lot of movies, such as the movie Semi-Pro, for example, featuring Will Ferrell. And this episode really centers around natural disasters that happen throughout history. And what is the number one thing that goes with natural disasters? It's the news. Anytime there's any type of disaster, either natural or anything, any type of disaster, the news is there to capture it and tell the whole world about it. That is one of their main jobs, is when a disaster happens, you better expect the news is going to be there. And how does Will Ferrell relate to the news? Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. And at the end of the movie Anchorman, there's this giant fight happening between all the news stations. One of the news stations was the Canadian network, which was led by the news anchor, also played by Jim Carrey. I wonder what other movie Jim Carrey played in that has to do with him being a news anchor. Bruce Almighty. And in the movie, he's an actual superhero, which pretty much confirms that Bruce Almighty is actually in the MCU. And they also have a sequel to Bruce Almighty called Evan Almighty, which is basically a different version of Bruce Almighty. So this perfectly parallels between the Loki we know and love and this new variant Loki that we don't really know that much about. Anytime you break down into Avengers movie and doing your research, you should never be afraid to take a step back. So that's what we're going to be doing. If we just take a step back to the movie Anchorman starring Will Ferrell, and there's actually 2 Anchorman movies. And so what we can take away from this is that there's only one other movie series that stars Will Ferrell, and there's 2 of them, and that's Daddy's Home. And because 2 is always better than 1, we're going to be talking about Daddy's Home 2. Where they actually introduced the WWE superstar John Cena. Really important quote to remember is from the movie Now You See Me, the closer you look, the less you see. So we're just gonna back up and think, what is John Cena's greatest accomplishment in Hollywood? And I know we're all thinking the same thing. The Fred movies, of course. He actually is in all three of the movies, making his introduction of him basically just walking or busting out of a refrigerator. Refrigerators. And we've learned that in the MCU universe, a lot of the writers like to keep everything tightly wound. They don't like to really grasp and come up with new characters and bring them in. And it's almost like everybody's related, that everything's a family. It's how Loki, who was actually the villain in the first Avengers movie, is actually brothers with Thor. They just want to keep that brotherly bond. So something we just have to think, what is like the brother of the refrigerator? And if you're thinking appliances, that answer is pretty simple. Washer machines. And so if we take all of that and compare Loki to a washer machine, we can safely assume that Loki is a woman. A lady Loki. And that's exactly what we get at the end of the episode. At the very end of the movie, right when this mysterious variant Loki reveals herself, we actually see a broken horn on her crown. Which, this crown looks suspiciously like Chaos's crown in the game Skylanders, which there's a chance he could actually be Loki because Earth exists in the Skylands universe. So that means if it's all in the same universe, then there's a chance that this is just a different variation of him. It could also be that Silva chick that is mentioned a lot in the comics to be a lady like Loki, and is also pretty much confirmed in the casting list of episode 2, but, you know, well, that's just a theory.